Okay, time for another Digimon discussion. This video is going to be about Yolei Inoue. Inoue. I can't pronounce her last name, sorry, but Yolei. She is the Digidestin of Love and Sincerity. Those are the two armored Digi-eggs that she has. I'll go through those. Her Digimon partner is Hawkmon, whose evolution tree is Perurumon, Poromon, Hawkmon, via regular digivolving Hawkwilamon, with Hawkwilamon DNA digivolving with Godamon to become Sylphimon, and when Hawkmon uses the Digi-egg of Love, becomes Halsamon, and when uses the Digi-egg of Sincerity, becomes Shurimon. And of course, I'll go over those a little bit more independently as I go through the video, and go through kind of Yolei and Hawkmon's timeline. So yeah, I got Love and I got Sincerity up here. As I said, I don't have a Yokomon one. I never got the Yokomon piggy bank, and I don't know why I never did, but I never did. So we got Tanamon, and then in representation in spirit of Biyomon, because Biyomon is a firebird, turns into a giant firebird, we have Torchic. So yeah. Yolei is kind of the first of the new Digidestin that we meet. Her timeline is in 2000, like the rest of the Digidestin that end up, like Yolei, or like Davis and Cody and Yolei and Ken, like them, she is chosen to become a Digidestin. Unlike Cody and Davis, her becoming a Digidestin, or being chosen to become a Digidestin, is not tied to Myotismon. Davis was, of course, at the center, where all the other families were. Cody and his mother and grandfather, which I'll go over in his video, were on a plane that Garudamon saved from crashing. Yolei's involvement with the Digimon did not begin until 2000. Yolei was one of so many children all around the world that was watching the battle with Diaboromon, between Diaboromon and Tai and Izzy and such online, and she was one of the ones that sent in an email. We do see a glimpse of her in the movie. We get a flashback of her later on in the series when they're talking about, oh, well, how did you guys get chosen to become Digidestin? And she's like, well, I wasn't part of that because we were out of town or something like that. But I sent an email in with everything that happened with Diaboromon online. So that's where her contact with the Digimon began, and where she was, because of that, eventually chosen to become a Digidestin. So she saw that battle. We know in her timeline a little bit, in like 2001, her and her family moved. She has her parents, and if I remember correctly, she has 2 older sisters and an older brother. And her family run a kind of a convenience store, or like a like a corner shop type thing. Because she works there a lot, like after school and stuff like that, and she brings lots of snacks for like the Digimon to eat. Like before they go to the digital world to do stuff, or like when they get home, she's got like a lot of food that she can give them. Which I'll go over her family a little bit more at the end, or as we see glimpses of them. But she moved into the same apartment building in Odaiba with Cody, and then later on, TK and his mom end up moving into the same building. And she goes to the same school as TK and Cody. We meet her when TK is on his first day of school for, I think it's supposed to be, whatever the new middle school is, or elementary school is, whatever it is that he's in, I don't remember. It's elementary school, I think, that they're still in at the time. And, so they go to school, and he meets Cody, and, Yolei meets Cody, and she's already friends with TK. And she ends up, Yolei actually is kind of a fan of Izzy's, because Izzy had been like the previous head of the computer club, and now like Yolei's the head of the computer club type thing, so she's kind of like very much admires Izzy. So Yolei could have also done quite well with the Digi-egg of knowledge, because we see throughout the series, we see her throughout the season, we show her level of intellect that she has. in regards to problem solving and things like that. So she would have been quite good to have like the crest of knowledge as well. But they gave that to Izzy instead, or to Cody instead. They gave him the Digi Egg of Knowledge, which is perfectly fine. Yolei's a kind of a good combination of Sora and Mimi. I get my gesturing right eventually. Sorry. But she ends up finding this email from Tai, and she's like, oh, well, there's this girl in this other class whose, last name has the same last name as this guy, so maybe they're related. So she goes and she takes the message to Kari, and Kari's like, my brother's in trouble, and her and TK and Izzy rush off, and like Davis runs with them. And then, Izzy tries to distract Yolei so that way Kari and TK can go into the digital world, and then out of the computer pops the new Digivices. Davis gets his, Yolei gets hers, and then Cody gets his. Then Davis and TK and Kari go on their little adventure where Davis gets his Digi Egg, and then later on, they come back at the end of that adventure after they first find out about the Digimon Emperor, and TK and Kari are reunited with Godamon and Patamon. Reverse those. They're reunited with their Digimon. And then when they come back, Izzy's kind of been telling Cody and, Yolei quite a bit about the digital world, and that they're going to be Digi-destined now. And they're like, oh, okay, that's interesting type thing. So, they have that. And then the next day is when Yolei and Cody go to the digital world for the first time, and Izzy and Sora go with them. Davis is still there as well, so are TK and Kari. But Tai doesn't get to go this time. Tai has to stay and talk to their teacher, which is funny. But Tai still talks to their former teacher to distract them, which they use the school's computer lab a lot, which is kind of funny. It's I'm pretty sure eventually the teachers are going to notice, or the other students may notice, these bright lights coming out of this room every time you guys go into the digital world, but apparently they never do. But, so Yolei and Cody get to go into the digital world for the first time, and, they end up making their way, the group ends up making their way to this temple. And in the temple, they find 2 new Digi-Eggs. And they pick up the Digi-Eggs, one says love on it and one says knowledge. So Sora goes over and tries to lift the love one, and it won't move. Izzy does the same thing with the knowledge one, and it doesn't move. And so they look at each other, and they remember what Tai said about what Davis was able to do, because Davis was able to lift the Digi-Egg of Courage, but Tai couldn't make it budge. He made the new Digivices pop out of it, but he couldn't make it budge. So they look at each other, and then Sora grabs Yolei and says, why don't you try to pick it up? And, Yolei picks it up like it's nothing, and it's the Digi-Egg of Love. And then out pops Hawkmon. Cody gets the Digi-Egg of Knowledge and gets Armadillomon, but I'll go over his in the next video a little bit more in detail. But Sora ends up talking a bit with Yolei, and she's like, okay, well, so here's what it is. Being a Digi-destined is, you have this bond with your Digimon and everything. And, sometimes it is scary to be a Digi-destined, because yes, there are evil Digimon out there, or there are, the Digimon Emperor with his black rings and everything to control, the dark rings and everything to control the Digimon. But it's also fun, and, it's, that type of thing. So Sora kind of helps, Yolei accept that she's going to be a Digi-destined. Again, Izzy does the same thing with Cody, and I'll go over that in Cody's video. But they're like, okay, and Yolei and Hawkmon kind of bond pretty quickly. And then, they have to Digivolve, she Digivolves Hawkmon into Hawkmon for the first time. And they end up, battling the Digimon Emperor for whatever reason. I don't remember exactly what it was. I don't remember if it was Davis got captured and then they had to go and save Davis or what. I don't remember, but they saved Davis. And, they saved whatever. They beat the Digimon Emperor for that time frame. They foiled his schemes that he would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for those meddling Digidestined and their Digimon. If you want to throw in a Scooby-Doo reference. And, so they did that, and then, a couple of episodes later or so is when Mimi shows up for the first time in the season, in the new season. She comes from America. It's during Golden Week in Japan, which is a big festival in Japan. And she shows up and she wants to meet the new Digidestined, and her and Yolei kind of just instantly take to each other. So it's just like, oh, yay! And like Yolei is just like so happy because like Yolei doesn't have like the best relationship with her sisters, but like Mimi she can connect with instantly, and like they would get along so wonderfully type thing. And like Mimi and Yolei just has this like fantasy of like Mimi being her actual sister, and the two of them just having like such a wonderful time, and it's funny. It's funny to watch. But what ends up happening is they go to the digital world, and Mimi keeps looking around to see if she can find Palmon. I went over this in Mimi's video. And Mimi and Yolei and Hawkmon get separated from the rest of the group, and then they end up coming across the Otamamon and the Geckomon, and they all the dark rings around them, so they're all possessed, or they're all controlled by the Digimon Emperor, and they keep going, Princess Mimi, and they want to try to capture her, and then Palmon shows up, saves them, and then Yolei and Hawkmon work together, destroy the Control Spire, free them. Mimi gets to have Palmon back. And they have their her friends, the Gecko, the Tamamon, the Otamamon, and the Geckomon are all back where they're supposed to be for her friends. So they have that, and then a little while later in the series we have it that Davis's soccer team, as I mentioned in his video, goes up against the same elementary school that Ken goes to, and the soccer team that he's on, and they play, and Yolei has this huge crush on Ken already throughout the first part of the season before that Yolei finds out that he's the Digimon Emperor. She has this crush on him. But Yolei also likes other boys because like Mimi's friend Michael shows up with her at some point, and I'll go over that. But Yolei just kind of likes Michael as well. But Sora or Yolei is there at the game, and she's watching the game and everything, and she has this crush on Ken, and at the end of the game Ken and Davis shake hands, and then when they get back to like the school or whatever, Yolei and Davis are like, Yolei's just like staring at Davis like, if I shake your hand, it'll be the closest I've come to being able to shake Ken's hand. So they shake each other's hands. And Davis is just like, oh God. Davis is just like, why is this happening? And, so they do that. And then they go to the digital world, and then they end up dealing with the Digimon Emperor. And this is when, the Digimon Emperor, pretends to capture the rest of the Digidestined, and then he's pretending to use them as, bait with Davis to force Davis to grovel to him. And, I went over this in Davis's video, Deltamon and everything. And, that doesn't work. Yolei and the rest of the group show up, and they help save Ken and everything. And, it's just, Yolei, they find out that Ken's the Digimon Emperor, and then Yolei just kind of gets her heart broken a little bit, I will admit. But, they find out that, oh, Ken's the Digimon Emperor now. That's not good. And then we cut ahead a bit. Yolei is there when Davis gets his second Digi-Egg, when he gets the Digi-Egg of Friendship. She's still part of those battles. They all go to the digital world together. They're all kind of about most of the same battles. So she's there for that. She witnesses all that. And then and then we cut ahead a little bit, and then they end up going to kind of the, this is when Mimi comes and visits the digital world again. Yolei and the rest of the group are in kind of like a restaurant that's there, and it's run by Digitamamon, who I went over this in Mimi's video. He was a Digimon that I mentioned way back with like Matt's video and with Joe's video. He was a Digimon that had kind of been working, not 100% underneath Myotismon, but he'd kind of been working with Myotismon, with Devimon, to cause a lot of problems for Joe and Matt. And then now he's a restaurant owner and he's kind of reformed his ways and everything. But he still needs to be paid and everything. And Mimi shows up with her friend Michael from America, who's just, when we meet the Digidestined from America. And they show up and, Michael's, willing to, pay for, everybody's food and everything. And then they sit and talk. And TK recognizes Digitamamon. And Digitamamon's like, no, 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 no. I've changed my ways. I don't do that anymore. I'm a good guy type thing. And then, then unfortunately that kind of gets turned on his head because Ken puts a dark spiral inside of Digitamamon. And he attacks Mimi, and then Yolei gets very frustrated and she kind of blows up at Digitamamon and tells him exactly what she thinks. And then this is when her Digi-Egg of Sincerity shows up. And then she uses the Digi-Egg of Sincerity to digivolve Hawkmon into Shurimon. Shuri is in, the ninja stars. And, digivolves him into that. And then she has him fight Digitamamon and free Digitamamon from the Dark Spiral. And Digitamamon, again, apologizes. Again, profusely apologizes again. Because the Digitamamon, it wasn't on the outside of him, it was actually inside of him where the spiral was. So they had to find something that they could, they had to have a Digimon that would be able to fight with that, and that happened to be Shurimon for that situation. Later on, we have it that they end up going to the this Chinese or Japanese, feudal looking village type thing or city where Shogun Gekomon reigns, and he has his the Gekomon and the Otamamon and such like that are there, and they go and they have a lot of fun with that, but they end up they're kind of well, they're in hiding because now Ken's in the digital world for the full time, so it's not as safe as it used to be at night, and they end Shogun Gekomon ends up getting a a dark spiral put on him, and he starts causing problems. And there's another ninja type Digimon that shows up that I don't remember his name, and I kind of don't care. And what ends up happening is what ends up happening is Yolei and Shurimon, they have a ninja off between the two of them, which is kind of fun. And, Shurimon wins, of course, and they're able to, stop Shogun Gekomon. And, he apologizes again because he's their friend. And then, Mimi or Yolei is there when they have, the big Digidestined reunion, when they have, where Mimi comes back and where everyone's there for the Digidestined anniversary for when they defeated Myotismon. And, she witnesses when Kari interacts with Kari and Gatomon interact with Wizardmon. The whole group sees that one, as is quite evident by the fact that I've mentioned it in every video. But they all see that one because even for the older Digidestined, they saw what happened with Wizardmon the first time, and they saw what it did to Kari and Gatomon. And now the younger kids, Davis and Yolei and Cody, they hadn't seen it yet. Or they didn't know about it, but they find out and they're like, oh, yeah, that's not fun. And I think it's one of the times where they realize that, oh yeah, Digimon can die. And I think that is kind of one of those moments there. But, they go on and, Wizardmon tells him, it's you have to defeat Ken with kindness. And that kind of confuses them a little bit. And then of course, they're then Ken creates Chimeramon, and they're like, okay, we're running out of time to take Ken down. We're running out of time here. We got to go after Ken. We got to find a way to stop him from doing this. And, they go after Ken, and they, this is when, Ty and Izzy and Matt are going to go on the fake camping trip. And, well, they actually go on a camping trip with Ty and with the TK and Matt's dad, of course, but it's, it's fake for the kids because they're actually going to go and camp in the digital world and try to find the Digimon Emperor. And they find his base and then it's gone. And Yolei kind of, this is another one of those milestone moments for Yolei. She takes a lot of having to try to find the Digimon Emperor and everything onto herself. And which is not a good idea. And, she went about trying to prove that she could do this on her own, but unfortunately she ends up getting attacked by a spider-type Digimon that is called Dokuomon. And the Dokuomon, tries to attack her, but Hawkmon saves her and ends up getting injured in the process. And then, Yolei, spends like the rest of that episode like, okay, how am I didn't want Hawkmon to get hurt. I didn't want anyone to get hurt. It's just, I wanted to try to prove that I could be helpful type thing. And, her and Hawkmon end up having kind of a heart-to-heart conversation that, you don't need to do this all on your own and everything. It's also one of the moments where we see kind of like Kari and, Yolei kind of bond a little bit, because Kari kind of stays to help take care of Hawkmon while the others go off to try to find where the Digimon Emperor's base went. Because they knew where it was, and it looked very stationary, and then it's like gone, and they can't figure out where the frick it went. And because it's like giant freaking hole in the ground that should be where it is, but it's not here, and like it's just like there's no like it's not like it like moved like in the ground to like get out of there, so it had there's like, well, it didn't go through the ground and it didn't bury itself, so maybe it flew away. And it did fly away, and then they find the Digimon Emperor's base, they deal with him, and they end up Yolei witnesses what happened. She watches Davis get Magnamon, and then she watches as Magnamon fights against Chimeramon, and then they all witness Wormmon sacrificing himself to give Magnamon more power, to give him the power to destroy Chimeramon, which he does, and watches as Wormmon effectively sacrifices himself to help save Ken. And they all see this, and it is very affecting to all of them, because they just start, Yolei does start crying as she watches as Ken loses Wormmon in his arms. And that moment I will go over a lot more when it comes to Ken's video. So after I do Cody's, I'll do Ken's. And what ends up happening is, Davis and the others, Yolei and them are just like, they're kind of stumped with what to do with Ken at that point in time. And then of course we get like where the movie takes place, where Yolei and Davis and Cody go to, they're on vacation, and then they go to America because they have to try to help TK and Kari, and then they meet Willis, and then they end up having to deal with Kokomon that turns all the way up into Cherubimon virus version, and they're there for that battle and everything. And they're, Yolei kind of thinks that Willis is cute. And, so there's that, that bond there that develops, and then, they go off. And, then we cut back to kind of the series where, Yolei and Cody and Davis and the rest of the younger kids are like, well, how about we work on trying to fix up the digital world? And this is when they each start getting their ability to Digivolve on their regular Digivolve, where, this is when Davis and Veemon end up getting to be able to, where Veemon can Digivolve regularly as opposed to just armor Digivolving. And so he gets X-Veemon. And then they witness, Ken shows up and he saves Cody from a Digimon that's called Thundermon, that we find out is actually a Control Spire Digimon. And initially, Davis is like, well, we should ask Ken to join our group, and give him a chance to redeem herself. And Yolei initially does not think that this is a good idea. She thinks that because they saw Stingmon kill Thundermon at Ken's command, and they didn't know that Thundermon was a Control Spire Digimon, because they didn't know about Control Spire Digimon at this point in time, and she just doesn't think that it's a good idea. And what ends up happening is, because she's like, it just, in her mind, it just looks like they just saw, like, Stingmon ruthlessly kill, an innocent Digimon that just may have, been having a bad day. They don't know. And then they end up getting a call for help from Mimi, who's, visiting the digital world and visiting Palmon. And she explains that there's this Digimon here called Golemon, and it's trying to attack this dam that you guys just fixed. and everything, and it's, it wants to flood this city that's down the way, which digital world topography is weird. Um, it's like they have like modern city type setup at one point, and then they have like ancient city, and then like there's other things, and it's just like, okay, yeah, no, the topography and the everything for this world is weird. Um, this world's geography is weird. But it's an anime world, so yeah, it's kind of a no, yeah, no, it's guaranteed that there's gonna be weird things in the geography. Um, but they end up, they show up, and Palmon explained that, oh no, Golemon is not a real Digimon. I saw this woman like poke her hair into this control spire, and she brought it to life, and it became Golemon and everything. So he's a control spire Digimon, and like Ken and Stingmon show up, and like they help. And they figure out that, oh, Ken must have known that Thundermon was a control spire Digimon. That's why it was okay for him to destroy him. And Yolei kind of gets over her problem with this, and this is when Hawkmon digivolves into Aquilamon for the first time. And, Aquilamon working together with Stingmon are able to defeat Golemon and destroy Golemon, and they're able to save the dam. And, she decides then to give Ken a chance, and enthusiastically tries to invite him to, come and join their team. Ken still doesn't do it. And then we go through a little bit more of this, and Davis and them end up, this is when, in that time frame is when like Davis and Ken are, DNA digivolve their Digimon for the first time, and where they're dealing with, Arukenimon, and where they're introduced to Mummymon and everything, and where, Ken's slowly becoming a little bit more a part of the group. Davis wants him there. Yolei kind of wants him there a little bit more. There's a few other bits that happen. TK is still a little on the iffy side. Cody is the last one that wants to have Ken there. That admits that, yeah, no, Ken's our friend. Cody's the last one that does that out of the kids. Mimi basically was just like, as soon as like Ken helped with like defeating Golemon, she's like, no, he's gonna be our friend type of thing. Which again, I'll go over some of Ken's relationship with the other Digidestin in his video, but it does kind of get touched upon here. And then we have it that the group are walking through like the forest one day, and then Gatomon remembers, oh, this is the place where I lost my tail ring, all those months ago or whatever. And so Yolei and Kari start trying to look for it, and then they hear Ken screaming, and they go and they find Ken, and then they kind of there's like a shift, and they end up getting taken to the dark ocean. And, it's like they can't communicate with Davis and TK and Cody, and it's just the three of them. And Kari and Ken are very much being affected by the Dark Ocean. Because, it's like this is when they find out, oh, Ken's been here before. And, so Yolei and Kari end up this is when Yolei and Kari end up connecting, because at one point Yolei slaps Kari. And, to get Kari to stop. And I don't remember if Kari slaps Yolei too at some point, but I know that Yolei slaps Kari. She also slaps Ken at one point in the series, which I just find hilarious, which is after this. But what ends up happening is, or is it before this that she slaps him? I don't remember. One of the two. I don't remember. I know she slaps Ken, but I don't remember if it's before this or after this. Because she slaps Ken because like Ken and Cody have like a argument about something, and then Ken leaves. And then that's when Arukenimon makes Black War Greymon. And then Yolei knows that they need Ken's help because they need the DNA Digivolve Stingmon and XVmon to make Imperial Dramon to go after to make Pail Dramon to go after him. But she flies off, and then she ends up slapping Ken at one point because Ken's being unreasonable. So, and he's just like he's got like this like he's got the bruise on his cheek and everything. And she's just like, I'm sorry I slapped you, but you were being unreasonable. And he's just like whimpering type thing. and it's funny. But he comes back and everything. I don't remember if that's before or after this moment, but so Yolei has slapped both Ken and Kari. I do not remember if Kari ends up slapping Yolei as well. But I don't remember. But this is when Yolei and Kari connect. And, Yolei kind of helps Kari kind of deal with some of the Dark Ocean stuff because she's like, it's like you're the worst enemy of the darkness because you are light. And then this is when Yolei and Kari end up being able to DNA Digivolve when Aquilamon and Godamon are able to DNA Digivolve into Sylphimon for the first time. They end up fighting a Digimon that's called Blossomon that is a Control-inspired Digimon that our Rikennimon made. I love Sylphimon. I think Sylphimon is just great. I like how when they did like the different Digimon, when they did like the DNA versions of them, that they do imply, and I might go over this in a separate video, but I do like what they do with the Digidust when they're DNA Digivolved, that they do, like, they have their separate minds in it, but they also are of like one mind for that type of, for that moment, because they do have a moment in the first episode when Sylphimon first shows up. They have like Aquilamon say something inside Sylphimon's mind, and then they have Godamon say something that indicates that they are, that agrees with them, and then they're like also sharing one mind, sharing one body in that case, which is kind of interesting to watch. As I said, I might do a video about DNA Digivolving. We'll see, but they do that, they fight Blossomon, and then they're able to get out of the Dark Ocean world, and they're reunited back with TK and Davis and Cody. And that, they tell them about that. It's like, okay, now TK, Yolei and Kari are DNA Digivolving partners. Davis is kind of upset about this because he wanted to be able to DNA Digivolve with Kari. And I'm pretty sure Ken's off to the side like, am I not good enough for you? Type thing. But they go through that, and they have a few more adventures where they deal with a few more Control-inspired Digimon. They deal with Blackboard Greymon in this time frame. Yolei in this time frame is when Yolei goes on her class trip to Kyoto. That's where they go. He goes to Kyoto. This is where she meets Sora's father and Joe's brother, Jim. This is also during the time frame when Blackboard Greymon is going around destroying Destiny Stones, which are these big, powerful stones that help keep balance between the real world and the digital world. And the digital world kind of starts to bleed into the real world, so Digimon starts showing up in Kyoto. And Yolei actually left Poromon with Izzy, for Izzy to take care of it, because Yolei couldn't take it with her couldn't take Poromon with her on the trip. Which I'm like, every other anime where someone takes something weird with them on their class trip to Kyoto seems it goes fine. But so they go and do that, and then Ken and Izzy have like a conversation during this time frame, which I went over in Izzy's video. I'll go over again a little bit more in like Ken's video. But then Izzy gives Poromon to Ken to take to the digital world, so he can kind of be revitalized a little bit, because if they're around their Digidestined, then they can be in the real world for a while without really any negative effects. But if they're away from their Digidestined and the digital world for a long enough period of time, it does kind of start to affect the Digimons, makes them a little more tired and lethargic, and because they don't have that bond with their Digidestined that they can feed on, or they don't have direct access to the digital world if they're there. But because we see this with the older kids Digimon, that they were in the digital world for 3-4 years or whatever in between when Tai and his group left the first time, and then when Tai and them returned at some point. Well, they had like that little mini meeting with like Genai, but then they didn't see them again for a while. And the Digimon were fine. They were so kind of sad because they missed their Digidestined, but they weren't like physically being drained because of it, because they were in the digital world. But what ends up happening is, Ken then, he's trying to deal with some of the Digimon that are trying to escape out of the digital world or that are being drawn into the real world. And he gives, Yolei her, he pops into pops through the digital world into Kyoto, gives Yolei Poromon, who can then Digivolve into Hawkmon. And then he, so it's like, grabs one of the Digimon that's like on a rampage and like him and Stingmon drag it back to the digital world. It's not a Control Spire Digimon, so they don't want to hurt it. And it's not a evil Digimon. It's just a Digimon that's in a very confusing situation. It got sucked into a portal and it doesn't know where it is. So I don't blame it for, kind of going a little bit on a rampage. It's the whole Godzilla thing of, well, you're the ones that woke it up and put something, built a city where its natural habitat kind of used to be. So it's kind of on your guys' end on that one. I'm sorry. And like it goes off. And like Ken goes off, but Yolei has Poromon and the Digivolves all the way up to I don't remember if they Digivolve all the way up, but if it goes just into Hawkmon or Aquilamon or if it goes into one of the armored Digivolves, I don't remember. But she ends up spending some time with Sora's dad and with Sora's dad and then Jim Joe's brother. And then learns a bit about the digital world and kind of like the supposed origins of it, which again I'll go over in a video. But then she goes home, and then they're working on trying to figure out how to beat Arukenimon. I skipped over this a little bit, but I'll go back. One of the times where they do very much a good job of like demonstrating Yolei's intellect is that I mentioned in Davis's video, I mentioned that at one point they go to this giant house in the digital world, and Arukenimon's there. And she's using this flute to control all of these different insect-type Digimon. So that does include Stingmon and Digmon, and it also includes all these other random insect Digimon, these Sneamon, these, different types of bee-type Pokemon. I was going fine! I gotten like 40 minutes into the video before I made that gaffe, so yeah. Before I hit Pokemon instead of Digimon. But so they work their way through that and everything. And Yolei's actually the one that comes up with the way to beat Arukenimon in this, or way to like stop the mind control flute from being able to control the insect type Digimon. So what she does is there's this giant computer that's in there, and Yolei knows computers very, very well in this. And she, between her and Kari and such, they're able to get this like audio editing software up and going, which is not too far off from like what we use anyway, from like the software that I use for these videos and everything. And like they record part of the flute, they record part of the sound that's coming off of the flute. And it's this giant freaking computer, so they're tiny compared to this computer, and they're just like Kari's like having to push the mouse all over the place and everything, and like TK and the rest of them, TK and Shurimon, like their Digimon are trying to protect Kari and Yolei from this while they're working and everything. And like Davis and Ken and Cody are like in danger at this point in time as well, so they're kind of running out of time. And Yolei ends up being able to she messes with like the audio, like we'll take this chunk of the audio and move it over here, and then we'll overlay it with this, and then we'll do this. And Kari's just standing there like, okay, I have no idea what you said. Yolei's just like rumbling off all this other stuff, and she's like, that's okay, all you have to do is press play. Kari, I can do that. That was kind of my answer to that at one point when I was a kid. I'm like, I don't know what Yolei's saying. I was like, no, we're gonna do that. Okay, I can do that. And like they mess with the audio, and then they play it back. Like they mess with like the pitch and the frequency and everything to just like make it that it like interrupts Arukenimon's one, and then they blast it, and then like that stops all the insect Digimon from being controlled by Arukenimon, just in time too, to save the others. So that shows one of Yolei's intellect moments that I wish they had showed a little bit more of, but they have it there. But then we cut back to, then we kind of get to Christmas, and what ends up happening is, they got the older Digidestin, and they got them their Digimon and sent them off. And then like Ken had invited the group to his Christmas party, and so they're all having they all agree to go, and then they're having fun at the Christmas party. And Yolei is apparently having a hard time understanding Go Fish, which is funny. And they end up, then they have the nice party, and then they end up having to deal with the Digimon. And then, of course, then we enter the Digimon World Tour, where, Sora and Yolei are the two that get paired up in that case, and they get sent to Russia, and they interact with a couple of Russian Digidestin, which, I think at least one of them was a cute boy, so Sora and Yolei are happy about that, which is funny, but like they have to deal with a whole bunch of these like Flymon that are coming, and because Yolei and Sora don't speak Russian. Which is like, I like that moment because it's like, okay, they're dealing with the language barrier in Digimon. Because, like, Kari and Izzy went to Hong Kong, so they're in China. And Izzy, maybe they can speak Chinese a little bit, or, maybe there's enough of, Chinese, Japanese, relations that they can speak enough that they can understand them. Davis went to New York to help Mimi, and Mimi obviously speaks Japanese and she speaks she speaks English, because she's been living there for a while, so she speaks English. But it's also the whole thing of there has to be sometimes like the Digivice has to act of like some form of like a universal translator, because like they go to Australia too, and like Australians speak English, but they can still do that. But then like Ty and TK go to France, they go to Paris, and yeah, they have like TK's grandfather there who can translate for them, and that's fine. But they can still seem to understand the girl perfectly, Catherine perfectly, and it's just like the Japanese school system must be much better at teaching kids multiple languages than the American school system is, because I took Spanish in high school for 2 years, and I took it at college again, and I'd be like, if I dove back into it again to learn the language again, I would have a much better grasp of it to a degree than someone who's just like starting for the first time. But I'm just like, how are you? Where does this come from? Where did this come from? Because what ends up happening is Yolei and Sora are like, well, I don't know any Russian, and neither do I. So they're like, Sora's like, well, I know like 3 words in Russian, but they're all food, and they're like, borscht and like other stuff that are like various types of food. And Yolei's go like, great, so you're the one that's in charge of ordering for us when we're ready to eat after the battle. And they're like, Yolei's just like, how about we do this? And like, instead of it being, it's like they use the Russian food words to coordinate their attacks. It's like, this means attack, and this means left, and this means right, and that type of stuff. And like, that seems to work, and it goes well, and they're able to beat the Flymon. And then they have to go even further north to like Siberia to deal with a whole bunch of, I think, like Frigimon that are there, which is just funny. And then we get back, and then the Digimon World Tour ends, and they get back, and they have like a nice, Christmas. And then, they have the language barrier and everything. And they get back, and they have like this nice little short Christmas thing. And then they end up having to deal with, the Daemon Corps, and having to deal with the Oikawa, who's, captured all of these children. And what ends up happening is, this is when it overlays with, Kari has mentioned to Tai about the fact of, Davis and Yolei and Cody, they've never had to kill a Digimon before. They've beat Control Spire Digimon and such, but I don't know what's going to happen if we have to beat like a real Digimon that's evil, that's an evil Digimon. I don't know how they're going to handle that. And Davis doesn't seem to have as much of a problem with it, and I think I mentioned this in Davis's video. He doesn't seem to have as huge of a problem with it as Yolei and Cody do. but I don't know exactly. That doesn't mean that Davis doesn't regard life as extremely important. It's just like he may understand the fact of this is an evil Digimon that we need to defeat because it's going to either hurt us or our friends if we don't do it, or it's going to hurt someone else if we don't find a way to stop it. And sometimes we do have to destroy it to do that. And that's the lesson that Yolei and Cody end up having to learn. A little bit more than Davis does. And, what ends up happening is Sylphimon has to fight Lady Devimon. And, Yolei, Yolei kind of doesn't want Sylphimon to destroy her, but Sylphimon has to protect Yolei to prevent Lady Devimon from killing Yolei. And while she accepts that they have to do it to save victims and save future victims from sadistic and evil Digimon, she still doesn't take it very lightly that they have to kill Digimon. She doesn't like doing that, and Cody doesn't like it either. But they also help with, supporting Ken when he has to kind of like tap into the darkness inside of him to send the leader of these Digimon to the Dark Ocean because he's too strong for them to destroy, so they kind of banish him. And then what happens is, then we have the, the Obikawa stuff, the Myotismon, Malamyotismon. Yolei and the rest of the group are there when he, is ready to transport him and the kids and Mummymon and Kenimon to the digital world, which fails, and then they end up in like the weird twisted dream world. And, Obikawa reveals, well, not Obikawa, but Myotismon reveals that he's been inside Obikawa for the past, 3.5, 4 years or whatever, that he used Ken, that he used Ken to get the Dark Spore and try to do what he could to try to mess up the digital world, and then, like, he made her Kenimon and Mummymon, and then, like, he did all this other stuff, and then, he found these kids, and they're basically just, like, a power source for him. And then, he drains all the power from, like, the dark spores that are inside of them. And then he transforms into Malamyotismon. And Malamyotismon is, up to that point, the strongest Digimon Blackboard Greymon was extremely powerful. But Blackboard Greymon was still kind of scared of Myotismon. Which, again, I'll go over a little bit in, like, Cody's video, because it involves Cody in that moment, but I'll also give Blackboard Greymon his own video, at one point, kind of after I finish the Digidestined, or maybe while I'm doing, like, the miscellaneous Digidestined for this season, but what ends up happening is, Yolei and the rest of the group are, like, paralyzed with fear, because of what they watch Malamyotismon's crew. He destroys her Kenimon, he destroys Mummymon without, like, a second thought, even though they were his servants. And he ends up then, subjecting them to his, his illusions. And, they all end up with their own illusions. And Yolei's illusion is, as I mentioned before, Kari's is world of peace between humans and Digimon. TK, happy dinner with his family. Cody gets to have his dad back. Ken gets to have his brother back. Yolei, I get all the desserts. Yolei's just like, I get all the desserts. Yay, yay, yay. And I'm just like, I love you, Yolei, but that does seem a bit much. But, like, they go through that, and she, Hawkmon shows up and, like, wakes her up out of it, along with, whatever version of, Vmon that showed up to help to snap her out of it. And she, she's like, yeah, it is nice having all of this, but it's lonely without my brother and sisters. And she then breaks the illusion, and, they go and they help Ken break out of his illusion. And then she then, they go, and then they're able to fight Malamyotismon, and, they're all able to digivolve their Digimon into all their different forms. So she has, Aquilamon, and Shurimon, and Halcemon, and then, of course, they have Sylphimon going as well. And so they work their way through that. And then what ends up happening is, they get knocked into the real world after they do quite a bit of damage to Malamyotismon. They get knocked into the digital world. And then of course he starts pulling more power from the dark spore kids, and then they're trying to make the kids stop thinking the negative thoughts, and that kind of works. And then of course they get all the other Digidestined and their Digimon showing up. All the Digidestined from all over the world show up, and they help with that, and they help weaken Malamyotismon, and then they're able to destroy Malamyotismon. And then Oikawa, and I'll go over this in like a video in Izzy's video, but also in Oikawa's video that I'll do for him himself, because he'll kind of have a separate one. Well, I haven't decided if he's gonna have like a separate one for Malamyotismon, or if they're gonna be combined. I haven't quite made that decision yet, but we'll see what happens. But what ends up happening is, Oikawa sacrifices himself to then, help revitalize the digital world, and that's very emotionally affected on all of the Digidestined as they watch this. Even though the fact that, less than, a couple of hours ago, this guy was a villain. But now he's, it's revealed that no, he wasn't really a villain. He was being manipulated the entire time. But what ends up happening is then we cut to a little ways ahead, and we cut to 2003, which is like, that summer of 2003, right before the Yolei and her group, Davis and Ken and Cody are going to be going into middle school, I think. So she's getting ready for that, and this is when they have to deal with Diaboromon, where Diaboromon's revenge, and where they have to deal with all the Kuramon, and so we have all those moments there. They end up witnessing the birth of Imperial Dramon Paladin mode, and they defeat all of the defeat Armageddon, and then they're able to capture all the Kuramon and delete them. So there's not really too much there. Yolei's there, but she's not like an extremely over involved part of it. Same thing with Digimon Adventure Tri. Yeah. Yolei, Cody, Ken, Davis, we get them in the flashes at the beginning of the first episode. We get like and we see them all like collapsing. They're fighting Alphamon. We find out a little bit later that they seem to have gone missing, but again, the rest of the group don't seem particularly worried about that. Again, that bugs me. Yolei and their group, and Yolei and Davis and Ken and Cody and their Digimon get found by Tai and Nishijima, and Diego Nishijima later on, and Nishijima sacrifices himself to send them all back to the real world, and then of course we find out that several months later they're all fine. They're recovering in the hospital and they'll be fine. And then we cut to Digimon Adventure 2000, or Digimon, or not 2000, Digimon 2020. The Digimon, takes place in 2010. The last evolution. Yolei is currently, she's kind of studying abroad, is what it seems to be. Studying abroad in Spain and everything, and she gets this email that she sends to Izzy because she's being lazy, and she sends it to Izzy, and Izzy, decodes the email, and it's from Menowa. So Yolei's kind of the person that leads Menowa to the other Digidestined, and then this is when Menowa interacts with Izzy and Tai and Matt and TK, and does the whole explanation of eventually when you reach the end of your potential and everything with your Digimon, then they will disappear. And that's why they choose children, because they have this great potential and everything. And what ends up happening is Matt then after it kind of seems like him and Tai have the timers on their phones, he's like, okay, I'm not going to quite accept this, but I don't trust this woman. So that's when he contacts Davis and the rest of the younger kids, and they end up going to Menowa's office, and they find more information there, and Yolei shows up, and that's when they go to the office, and they find this other information about Menowa, and other information about her Emura, who's her kind of bodyguard, and that they have to be involved with the Osmon, and they perform a background check on her and everything. and they send the information back to Matt and everything via, payphone calling from New York. And then when Matt and Davis, or when Matt and Ty are having to deal with Menawa and Eosmon in the Crystal Digital World section, that is when Yolei and the rest of the younger kids are working on, trying to protect the random other Digidestin that are in the real world from being attacked by all the Eosmon clones. And they're able to stop them. And then, of course, Davis or Ty and Matt, I don't know why I keep saying Davis, Ty and Matt are able to defeat Eosmon and save Menawa. And that destroys all the Eosmon clones and frees all the other Digidestins, so they're fine. We don't really get any other update on that from that, but then we cut to 2027 in the timeline. And this is, of course, when all the kids are all grown up and they have kids of their own and they're married and they have their own careers. Yolei ended up marrying Ken. They're one of the few canon couples that go along with that, along with Matt and Sora. And no, I was perfectly fine with Ken and Yolei. I thought they were a cute couple. So they have kids. They seem to have 3 kids at this point in time. They have, it looks like, or do they have 4 kids? I don't remember. But they have like a son and a daughter and another son. They have a daughter who's a preteen and has a Poromon. They have a child. They have a grade school age son, has a Minomon. Minomon, whatever that's, it's one of the things that, Stingmon evolves from. And they have an infant with like a Leafmon. So the baby has a Digimon. God forbid that Digimon digivolves so that baby is still a baby. My Digidestin is crying. I must help. Then change its diaper. I don't have legs or arms. I can't do that. Type thing. But they have 3 kids, and Yolei's the stay-at-home mom, the housewife, and everything. And Ken ended up becoming a detective. And the line that's in the English is that TK says, "Well, Ken might be a great detective, but he can't seem to detect when it's his turn to do the dishes." Which I just always thought was so funny. They seem quite happy and everything. And then we cut to, and then we can talk about kind of their relationships, Yolei's relationships, her family. She has her parents. We don't know their names. We know that they run a convenience store. And that, Yolei and her siblings will do like shifts there and everything. She has a brother whose name is Mentaro. She has Mome, who is one of her older sisters, and then Shizuru, who is her other older sister. Both of them, I think, are friends with June, who is Davis's older sister. But I don't really know that much about them. She doesn't seem to get along with them too well in the beginning, and that does seem to change because we do see her parents and her siblings, or at the very least her parents. I think her siblings are there too. In the last 2 episodes where the Digidestins are all going to where the older Digidestin and their families, along with the families of the younger Digidestin, make their way to the summer camp in the middle of winter, where like they went to the digital world for the first time. And I believe that Yolei's family is there, and I think it is hinted or stated that later on when they have Kari has like a thing where she'll do like a intro course for like Digimon 101 for like new Digidestin, and I think all 3 of Yolei's siblings get Digimon in that, along with June and Jim, or at the very least headcanon they do. If they did, we never found out what Digimon they had, but they were never ones that I like paired with anything specific. June I did, but I never really did it with any of the other ones. Yolei's future husband is Ken, of course. They have, their daughter, and they have their 2 sons and everything. Yolei and Ken have a very good relationship, which I'll go over in a minute. Yolei and Davis, sometimes Davis views Yolei as sometimes loud and a flirt, but has no big issues with her in general. Strangely enough, Davis did not like it when Willis flirted with Yolei and Kari. I understand the Kari one, but he didn't like it when he flirted with Yolei either. But he didn't like it. I think because he's like being protective of Yolei as well. But they get along fine. They do argue at times, but it's usually over. It gets resolved pretty quickly. Yolei and Ken, of course, she has a crush on Ken at the beginning. It's Ken Joji. Of course, at the beginning, and then when they find out that he's the Digimon Emperor, that crush goes away, and then later on, it does come back, obviously, because she, of course, ends up later on, they end up getting married, obviously. But it does come back, and we do see that she, her and Ken's relationship gets better and everything. She also, as I mentioned, slaps him at one point, which is just funny. She's very supportive of him, and the crush does come back and everything, and of course they're married by the end. Yolei and Cody, they've lived in the same apartment building for a while, so they've been friends for a while, and they get along very well. Cody doesn't seem to be too surprised if Yolei goes a little bit overboard with something. He'll still be, cautious and helpful and everything, but he's not going to be like, what are you doing? He's just like, it's Yolei, we're used to it. Yolei and Kari, of course, they're DNA Digivolution partners. They get along. It takes a little bit, but they do get a much better of a relationship later on. Squeaky chair. Squeaky chair. But they get a better relationship as it goes. TK and Yolei, they live in the same building and they become friends pretty quickly. Again, they get along rather well. Yolei and Mimi, oh god, Yolei adores Mimi, wishes that Mimi would, kind of has her be her role model, wishes that Mimi was like her older sister and everything, and they just have so much fun with that, and it's just funny. And then of course, Yolei and Sora, again, they get along quite well. They don't know each other too well in the beginning, but it does get better and everything. And of course, Yolei has, Sora's, the Digi-Egg that corresponds with Sora's crest, and she has a Digi-Egg that corresponds with Mimi's crest. I think one of the reasons why they ended up like pairing the stuff that way is because like in the second generation, for the Digimon Adventure 2.0, that they did want to still have the older kids be part of the journey. And they're like, well, we still need to have them there, so we don't need to introduce as huge of a cast of characters this time around, so we don't need as many kids. And we're also going to have like Kari and TK as also part of this younger group. So that's why, it's like, well, how about we just have 4 new ones? One of them will start out as the Digimon Emperor, and then he'll end up becoming their ally later on, becoming their friend. But we'll start with these 3 ones first, and they can each have like 2, attributes of like one of the older Digidust. And Davis has, courage and friendship from Tai and Matt, and then Yolei can have the love and sincerity from Sora and Mimi, and then Cody will have kind of like not be 100% combination of like Joe and Izzy, but like he'll still have like the reliability and the knowledge and such. Like those kinds of still have those similar attributes. Which I don't think is a bad idea. And then Ken gets the new attribute of kindness. And then we have, Sora or Yolei and Tai. They get along fine. He sees her as a very excitable girl, but there's not really anything else there. Matt sees, Yolei, she's an essential member of this. Yolei has done some different sound mixing for like his band, the Teenage Wolves, and one of her older sisters is in his class. So connection there. Yolei and Izzy, she looks up to Izzy quite a bit. He's the former president of the computer club. She very much enjoys that. They get along quite well because they can talk about, different computer things and programming and everything like that. and Yolei and Joe. Again, they get along fine. They see each other as important members. Yolei calls him old reliable. Old reliable Joe at some point and everything. At one point in the series, so it's just kind of fun to watch that. We get good interactions with each of the different characters and everything. So I like Yoli. Um, you know, I would love it if they did, like, if whoever did the designs on these shirts, I would love it if they did like designs for like the younger kids for like with Davis with his and Ken with kindness and Yoli with sincerity and love and all of that, or if it's just more involved with like their regular digivolving instead. So like with Davis, it would be like XVmon. With Ken, it would be Stingmon. With Yoli, it would be Aquilamon. With Cody, it would be Armadillomon. Which Cody will be the next video that I'll do for this, and then it'll be Ken after that, and then I'll be doing some of the more miscellaneous ones. So I'll probably do probably it'll be Willis, and then Mako, and then Minowa. Well, it might be Willis. It'll definitely be Willis. Will be the first one because he's kind of the first miscellaneous Digidestin that we kind of get introduced to in the series. And then I'll do some of the other ones as well. But then I'll also have a couple of other ones that I'll probably throw in stuff like I'll do a discussion on Urkenimon and Mamemon, and I also am going to do like a discussion, if I haven't started it already by the time this one goes up, but like a discussion series on some of the friend Digimon that they have. So that's what I got for this one. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Is there anything else I needed to say? No, I don't think so. Bye! It's amazing. I haven't felt this good in years, and all because of catnip. Who knew?